There's a reason why the most powerful people in history have spent time alone before their breakthroughs. There's a reason why some of the greatest minds on this planet have disappeared into solitude before they changed the world. Being alone is not a curse, it's a weapon. Most people fear being alone because they don't want to face themselves. They drown out their thoughts with distractions, numbing the voice inside that's screaming for change. But the truth is, when you strip away the noise, when you silence the opinions of the world, you finally hear what matters most, your own voice. And that voice, it's been buried under doubts, fears, and society's conditioning. But when you're alone, you have no choice but to confront who you really are. This is where transformation begins. Not in the crowd, not in the opinions of others, not in the validation of society, but in the moments where it's just you, your thoughts, and the raw truth about what you need to do to get to the next level. Because when you're alone, your mind becomes your greatest weapon. Think about it. When you step away from the world's noise, your focus sharpens, your creativity explodes, and your energy is no longer scattered. You start to realize that everything you need has been inside you all along. Most people never reach their full potential because they are terrified of solitude. They constantly seek validation, approval, and comfort in others. But those who embrace the silence, they separate themselves from the weak. They don't waste time arguing with small-minded people. They don't let negativity infiltrate their vision. They use that time to sharpen their minds, to build their skills, to create a life that nobody can take from them. Because greatness isn't built in front of an audience. It's built in isolation. The hours you spend alone, grinding, studying, growing, those are the moments that will separate you from the rest of the world. The billionaires, the champions, the icons, they all spent countless hours alone mastering their craft while the rest of the world was busy being entertained. So if you feel alone right now, congratulations. That means you're in the perfect place to transform, the perfect place to rise, the perfect place to rewrite your story. Because solitude isn't weakness, it's where your power is born. There was a time when I thought being alone was a punishment. A cruel joke life played on those who weren't lucky enough to be surrounded by the right people, the right circumstances, the right opportunities. But I was wrong. Being alone wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. A gift I didn't recognize at first, but one that transformed everything about me. Because here's the truth most people won't tell you. Solitude is where transformation begins. When you're alone, you're forced to face the one person you've been avoiding your entire life. Yourself. And for most people, that's the scariest thing in the world. That's why they drown themselves in distractions. They scroll endlessly, binge watch nonsense, surround themselves with noise, and run from the silence as if it were a monster waiting to devour them. But the real monster isn't the silence. The real monster is the person you refuse to face when all the distractions are gone. Because when you're alone, there are no excuses. There's nobody to blame. There's no one to lean on, no one to validate your feelings, no one to rescue you. It's just you. And that's when the real work begins. I remember the first time I truly embraced solitude. At first it was uncomfortable. It felt unnatural. The silence was loud. My mind was restless. Every insecurity, every doubt, every failure I had ever experienced came rushing to the surface. It was like standing in front of a mirror and seeing every flaw magnified 1,000 times. But instead of running, I did something different. I faced it, and in that moment, something shifted. I realized that the discomfort wasn't my enemy, it was my teacher. It was showing me the parts of myself that needed work, the parts of myself that I had ignored for too long, the parts of myself that were weak, broken, and in desperate need of rebuilding. See, when you're surrounded by people all the time, you don't get the chance to see yourself clearly. You don't get to hear your own thoughts. You don't get to understand what you truly want because you're too busy absorbing the noise of everyone else, their opinions, their expectations, their fears. And without realizing it, you become a product of their influence instead of the architect of your own life. But when you're alone, that's when clarity comes. That's when you start asking yourself the hard questions. Who am I really? What do I want? What's been holding me back? And if you sit with those questions long enough, the answers will come. Not from the world, not from social media, not from the opinions of others, but from within you, and that's when transformation happens. The greatest leaders, the most successful individuals, the icons we admire, they all understood this. They knew that solitude wasn't a weakness, it was a necessity. Steve Jobs took long walks alone to think. Albert Einstein locked himself away to solve problems that would change the world. The greatest athletes trained in silence, perfecting their craft long before anyone saw their greatness, because they understood something most people don't. Growth doesn't happen in the spotlight. Growth happens in the dark. It happens when no one is watching, when there are no cheers, no applause, no recognition. It happens in the moments when you are completely alone, pushing yourself to be better than you were yesterday. And yet, most people run from solitude. They fear it. They think being alone means they're failing, that they're unloved, that something is wrong with them. But that's a lie. Being alone is not the absence of love or success. It's the incubation of it. It's where strength is built, where vision is sharpened, where resilience is forged. I've seen it in my own life. The most painful, isolating moments, the moments when I felt like I had no one, were the moments that shaped me into the person I am today. Because in that solitude, I learned who I really was. I learned what I was capable of. I learned that I didn't need permission to become great. I just needed discipline. I stopped waiting for approval. I stopped seeking validation. I stopped relying on others to tell me what I was worth, because I realized that everything I was searching for was already inside me. I just had to be alone long enough to find it. And that's what most people miss. They think success is about networking, about knowing the right people, about being in the right place at the right time. And while those things can help, true success starts with you. It starts in the moments when you're alone, working, grinding, growing. It starts in the moments when no one believes in you, when no one is watching, when no one cares. That's when you separate yourself from the rest of the world, because most people won't do it. Most people will avoid the work, the silence, the discomfort. They'll choose distractions over discipline. They'll choose comfort over challenge. They'll choose the crowd over solitude. But the few who embrace it, they become unstoppable. They develop unshakable confidence because they know who they are. They develop unbreakable focus because they've trained their mind in the silence. They develop an unmatched work ethic because they're not waiting for someone to push them, they push themselves. So if you find yourself alone right now, don't see it as a punishment. See it as an opportunity, because in this moment you have a choice. You can either run from the silence, numb yourself with distractions and stay the same, or you can embrace it, face yourself, do the work, and come out on the other side transformed into the person you were meant to be. There's a war happening every single day, not out there in the world, but inside your mind. A battle between the part of you that wants to be great and the part of you that settles for mediocrity. The war between your potential and your excuses. In the battlefield, it's not in your circumstances. It's not in your past. It's not in the opinions of others. It's in your mind. Most people never win this war because they've never taken control of their own thoughts. They let distractions dictate their focus. They let fear control their actions. They let self-doubt kill their dreams before they even have a chance to fight for them. But the ones who rise, the ones who create, innovate, and dominate their field, they understand something most people don't. Your mind is your greatest weapon, but only if you learn how to use it. And solitude is the training ground. When you're constantly surrounded by people, by noise, by opinions, your mind is under attack. Every conversation, every distraction, every influence pulls you in a different direction. Your focus is scattered, your thoughts are clouded, and your energy is drained. But when you step into solitude, when you eliminate the noise, something powerful happens. Your mind sharpens. Think about the greatest minds in history, the inventors, the thinkers, the revolutionaries. They didn't create their legacies in the middle of a crowd. They did it alone, in the silence, in the stillness, in the moments where they had no choice but to rely on their own thoughts. Because clarity is born in solitude. When you remove distractions, your mind starts working for you instead of against you. You start thinking at a level most people never reach. Your creativity skyrockets. Ideas start flowing like never before. You begin to see solutions instead of problems. You start connecting dots that others don't even notice, because solitude forces you to go deeper. Most people only think at a surface level. They react to life instead of designing it. But when you spend time alone, you start developing the kind of mental strength that separates the weak from the unstoppable. You stop looking for quick fixes. You stop getting influenced by every little thing. You stop allowing fear to dictate your decisions. Instead, you train your mind to focus, to create, to build. And that focus It's a superpower. Look at the most successful people on this planet, the billionaires, the world-class athletes, the inventors, the artists who changed history. Every single one of them had periods of intense solitude where they locked in and did the work that no one else was willing to do. They trained their minds in silence so that when they stepped back into the world, they were unshakable. That's what solitude gives you. It gives you control over your own mind. Most people are controlled by their emotions. They wake up and let their feelings decide their actions. If they don't feel like working, they don't. If they don't feel motivated, they quit. But the ones who win, they don't wait to feel ready. They train themselves to act regardless of how they feel. Because when you master your mind, you master your emotions. And when you master your emotions, you become unstoppable. Think about a soldier in training. Do they wait until they feel like training? No. They wake up and they train every single day, whether they want to or not, because they know that when the battle comes, hesitation will get them killed. Your battle is no different. If you let your emotions run the show, if you let distractions control your focus, if you let fear make your decisions, you'll never break through. You'll always be stuck in the same cycle, watching others rise while you stay exactly where you've always been. But when you train your mind in solitude, when you develop the discipline to sit with your thoughts, to push through discomfort, to silence the noise and focus on what truly matters, you become dangerous. You stop needing motivation because you've built momentum. You stop getting thrown off track by negativity because you've built resilience. You stop wasting time on meaningless things because you've built clarity. And that's why most people never reach their potential, because they don't have the mental toughness to sit alone and do the work. They need distractions. They need entertainment. They need constant validation from others. But the ones who rise, the ones who dominate their industry, who build legacies, who change the game, they disconnect from the world long enough to sharpen their minds. They embrace the silence. They train their focus. They build an ironclad mindset that can't be broken. And when they step back into the world, they move differently. While others are distracted, they're locked in. While others are making excuses, they're executing. While others are waiting for permission, they're taking action. Because they understand that their mind is their greatest weapon. And once you understand that, once you train yourself to think at a higher level, to create at a higher level, to focus at a higher level, there's nothing in this world that can stop you. Silence is uncomfortable for most people. It's something they avoid, something they try to fill with noise, distractions, and the company of others. The idea of being alone terrifies them, not because they don't enjoy peace, but because when the world goes quiet, they are left with themselves. And most people aren't ready for that battle. They don't want to hear their own thoughts. They don't want to confront their fears. They don't want to sit with their failures, their regrets, or the truth about the life they're living. So they escape. They run toward anything that numbs them. Social media, television, meaningless conversations, temporary relationships, anything that keeps them from having to face the silence. But the ones who embrace it, the ones who step into that silence and don't run from it, they gain power. Because silence is where the weak crumble and the strong rise. Most people are weak because they are dependent on validation, dependent on distractions, dependent on the presence of others to feel okay. They measure their worth by the attention they receive, by the number of people around them, by how entertained they can keep themselves. But the ones who can sit alone, who don't need constant input from the world, who are strong enough to exist in their own presence without feeling lost, those are the people who dominate in life. Because when you strip away the noise, you see things as they really are. You see the gaps in your life. You see the things you've been avoiding. You see the truth. And most people don't want that. They would rather stay busy than sit in that kind of honesty. But the ones who do, they gain an advantage that most will never experience. Silence reveals who you really are. If you're weak, silence will break you. It will expose every insecurity, every fear, every weakness you've been hiding behind distractions. But if you're strong, if you lean into that discomfort, silence becomes your greatest ally. It becomes the space where you sharpen your mind, where you build resilience, where you separate yourself from the masses who are too afraid to be alone with themselves. The ones who embrace silence don't need to be entertained. They don't need constant attention. They don't rely on the world to tell them who they are. They create their own path. They don't need a crowd to move forward. They move forward alone if they have to. And that's why silence separates the weak from the strong, because in the silence, the weak feel lost, they panic, they fill the space with distractions because they don't know how to exist without constant input. But the strong, They use the silence to think, to grow, to plan, to build. Every great thinker, every leader, every visionary who has changed the world, at some point they stepped away from the noise. They spent time alone. They trained themselves in silence because they understood that clarity doesn't come from chaos. It comes from stillness. Most people have never experienced real stillness. Their minds are constantly flooded with information, opinions, entertainment. They've never sat in a room without music, without their phone, without talking to someone, and just let themselves exist. And because of that, they've never truly met themselves. But the strong do. The strong spend time alone because they know that's where their power is built. They use the silence to think deeply, to sharpen their focus, to develop an unshakable sense of self. They are not easily influenced, not easily broken, not easily swayed by the opinions of others. Because they have faced themselves in the silence and they have built strength where most people have allowed weakness to take root. When you can be alone, when you can sit in the silence and not run from it, you develop an edge that the world cannot take from you. You stop looking for validation. You stop needing distractions. You stop relying on anything outside of yourself for strength. And that's when you become truly powerful, because most people will never reach that level. Most people will never embrace the silence long enough to grow from it. But the ones who do, they don't just survive in this world, they own it. Greatness is never built in the spotlight. It is built in the shadows, in the hours no one sees, in the moments of complete isolation when there is nothing but you and your craft. The world celebrates the finished product, the success, the wealth, the recognition, but what they don't see is what it took to get there. What they don't talk about is the loneliness, the sacrifice, the nights spent working when everyone else was asleep. Look at the legends, the billionaires, the history makers, the ones who changed the world. They didn't rise because they followed the crowd. They rose because they separated themselves from the crowd. They disappeared into isolation to master their craft, to sharpen their skills, to build something so powerful that when they finally stepped back into the world, they were unstoppable. Steve Jobs spent years obsessing over design and innovation, locked away in deep focus before Apple changed technology forever. Elon Musk studies relentlessly, often sleeping alone in factories while building the future. Michael Jordan didn't become the greatest basketball player of all time by hanging out and wasting time. He spent endless hours alone in the gym, perfecting every move, every shot, every detail of his game. These people understood something most will never grasp. Isolation is not a weakness, it is a weapon. Because when you are alone, you are forced to confront yourself. There are no distractions, no easy escapes, no one to blame, just you and your work. And most people can't handle that. Most people need the noise, the validation, the comfort of others to feel okay. But those who embrace isolation, they build something the world cannot ignore. Greatness is built in the moments when no one is watching, when there's no applause, when there's no external reward, when it's just you grinding, pushing, refining, improving. The weak seek company. They need to be surrounded, entertained, reassured. But the strong, they disappear. They go all in on their vision. They sacrifice their weekends, their social lives, their temporary pleasures for something far greater. Mastery. Mastery does not happen in crowded rooms. It happens in solitude, in the hours where you are alone with your thoughts, in the relentless pursuit of something bigger than yourself. The musician who locks themselves in a room, playing the same notes over and over until perfection is achieved. The writer who disappears from the world, poring over their words, rewriting, refining until the story is flawless. The entrepreneur who spends years behind the scenes, failing, learning, adjusting before finally breaking through. The average person doesn't understand this. They think success happens overnight. They think greatness is a stroke of luck, but the ones who actually achieve it, they know the truth. They know that before the world sees the results, there were years of unseen work, years of sacrifice, years of discipline. And that's why so few people reach the top, because most aren't willing to go through that. Most aren't willing to be alone, to disconnect from the noise, to commit to something so fully that it consumes them. They want comfort. They want quick success. They want to be surrounded by people, by entertainment, by distractions. But those who want to be great, they embrace the loneliness. They understand that the time spent alone in deep focus, in relentless effort, is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. They don't fear isolation, they use it. They use it to build, to create, to master, to dominate. And when they finally emerge, the world doesn't know what hit them. Because greatness is born in isolation. Always has been. Always will be. You have two choices in life. You can stand with the crowd, lost in the noise, blending in with the masses, or you can step away, disappear into your work, and emerge as something the world has never seen before. The path of greatness is not walked by many. It is walked by those who dare to be different, those who dare to sacrifice, those who dare to embrace the silence and let it forge them into something unstoppable. Most people will never understand what it takes. They will tell you to take it easy. They will tell you to enjoy life, to relax, to balance work with entertainment, to live a little. But the ones who listen to that, they never make history. Because history isn't made by those who do what's comfortable. History is made by those who do what's necessary. Let me tell you something. The world will try to convince you that success is about luck, about connections, about talent, but none of that matters if you don't have the discipline to lock in and do the work. Talent without effort is wasted potential. Intelligence without execution is useless. Connections without skill lead to nothing. The real formula for success is this: isolate yourself, master your craft, and come back so good they can't ignore you. Because in the end, nobody cares about the hours you put in behind closed doors. Nobody cares about the nights you spent alone, working, grinding, sacrificing while everyone else was partying, watching movies, wasting time. But when you emerge, when the results speak for themselves, when the world sees what you have built, then they will care. Remember this. Remember this. Remember this. Members are not made in front of crowds. They are made in the dark when no one is watching. Muhammad Ali once said, "I hated every minute of training, but I said, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion." That's the mindset. That's the price you pay for greatness. You suffer in silence so you can celebrate in success. You struggle alone so that one day the world will stand and recognize what you have built. And when that day comes, when you step onto the stage, when you hold the trophy, when your name is spoken in rooms you've never even entered, the world will call it an overnight success. They will say you were lucky, that you had some advantage they didn't, but you will know the truth. You will know about the hours of unseen work, the times you wanted to quit but didn't, the moments when you were alone, doubting yourself, pushing through the pain, refusing to stop. Kobe Bryant used to show up to practice before the sun even rose. He would be drenched in sweat before his teammates even arrived. He didn't wait for permission to be great. He created it in the silence. That's what separates legends from everyone else. So the question is, are you willing to be alone? Are you willing to shut out the distractions, step into the silence, and master your craft? Are you willing to disappear for months, for years, and come back as a force so powerful that the world has no choice but to pay attention? Because if you are, nothing can stop you. Not doubt, not fear, not the opinions of others, not failure, because the one who embraces solitude, the one who sharpens their mind, the one who commits to their craft when no one is watching, that is the one who rises above them all. So now you decide, stay with the crowd or separate yourself and build something legendary. Your future is forged in the silence. Make it count.